Hello again, I'm Corey Amsler, and welcome to another segment of 100 Years, 100 Objects, a Mercer Centennial Moment. The tradition of the presentation sword, that is, an ornate weapon not intended for battle, but rather to reward and recognize a military officer who had served with distinction, reaches back a number of centuries. But the practice really reached its height during the American Civil War. Often, junior officers or even the rank and file of a particular unit would demonstrate their trust, their loyalty, their esteem for their commanding officer by presenting him with a richly decorated and embellished edged weapon. The Mercer Museum holds a few such ceremonial weapons in its collection. Among them is this sword and its accompanying scabbard that was presented to Colonel Thomas Elwood Rose of the 77th Pennsylvania Infantry by his fellow officers sometime during the year 1863, right in the midst of the conflict. The scabbard bears an inscription to Rose calling him the regiment's gallant leader. Not only does this 153-year-old artifact link us to Rose, but also it connects us to one of the most daring exploits of the entire Civil War. A native of Bucks County, Rose had moved to Pittsburgh just before the war. In the same year that his fellow officers presented him with this weapon, he had the misfortune of being captured while leading his troops into battle at Chickamauga, Georgia. He was taken to Richmond, where he was incarcerated at the infamous Libby Prison. Not one to sit idly by while others fought the war, Rose immediately went about planning an escape from Libby. The plan involved tunneling out of the rat-infested basement of the prison. When the plan was executed in February of 1864, Rose was the first to exit out of the tunnel. Unfortunately, he was captured shortly afterward by a Confederate patrol. But many of the more than 100 others who escaped through Rose's tunnel did manage to reach safety in the Union lines surrounding Richmond. It was the largest and most daring prison break of the entire Civil War. Rose actually spent 13 days in the dungeon at Libby for his role in planning and leading the escape, but happily, not long afterwards, he was released and exchanged and ultimately rejoined his regiment, which he led for the remainder of the war. After the conflict, he joined the United States Regular Army, where he served until his retirement. In 1907, he passed away and was buried at Arlington National Cemetery. After his death, Rose's widow, Adelaide, remembered the family connection to Bucks County and in 1922 donated the sword and scabbard to the Mercer Museum. Here in the museum, the story and the artifacts sort of reinforce each other. The sword is made that much more meaningful by the story of the Libby escape, and the story is made that much more tangible by the sword's very survival. This has been another Mercer Centennial Moment. I'm Corey Amsler. Thanks very much for watching. We'll see you next time.